Hey Instagram, we're doing another Instagram Live today. Today we're going to be speaking with Josias Figueirido, who is the artist whose work I'm painting around and showing now. This exhibition is called Encounters in the Garden. Very excited to get up close to a lot of this work for you all because they are paintings. A lot of folks who come into the gallery even at first glance think that they're prints. But I'm going to invite Josias in and we'll get started talking about the show. And I'll just continue to pan around. Morning, everybody. Hey, Josias.
Hey, Kevin, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
We've had this show up for 2 weeks now, and I'm loving it, and I'm loving the conversations, and I'm feeling just like rested looking at this work all the time. So I'm excited to talk to you about it and to hear a little bit more about these characters and these different scenes and this world that you've created for us. Do you want to start by just introducing yourself?
Sure, yeah, no, thanks. I'm excited for this conversation. I'm Josias Figueirido. I'm an artist originally from Spain, but I've been living in the US for 10 years now. I work primarily as a painter. I also work with animation, augmented reality, 3D print and printmaking, but I feel my focus is mainly painting. And usually I engage with ideas related to immigration, but particularly friendship and community within the immigration experience. And I tend to work within this fictional narrative, imaginary world that I create. So yeah, thanks. I'm excited to talk with you, Kevin.
Yeah, and I've just got to say, this work is so beautiful, but it's so wholesome too. I mean, you mentioned already that you're interested in themes like friendship. So this exhibition is called Encounters in the Garden. Maybe it would be nice to introduce what prompted the title, but also maybe talk a little bit about like let's start with these two characters here. Can you introduce them?
Yeah. So those two characters, Piri the Dreamer on the right, the yellow character, and Flying Coyote on the left, the pink character, those are my main fictional characters. They were born in 2022, so a couple of years ago, after I moved to live in Laredo at the Texas-Mexican border. They are my primary characters, and they are a combination of factors, ideas related to my own experiences and biographical events about moving and living in different places and developing friendships with people that I do not share a background with, but developing like meaningful friendships. But also they are connected to ideas related to immigration, especially Hispanic immigration, right? Like flying, for example, Piri the Dreamer. He's a dreamer in all senses. He's always asleep, but he's also a visionary, and there is a reference also to the undocumented minors here in the U.S. that come from Latin America. So there is a combination of factors. And Piri the Dreamer, Flying Coyote is this pinkish coyote that also references ideas related to immigration, like the coyote, right? The human smuggler. But there is also an idea of redemption, an idea of turning things around, turning disadvantages into advantages. So both are my primary characters, but they they emerge from a combination of factors.
And they're in all of these paintings together, exploring. And what is this? What is this garden? So the show's encounters in the garden. What is this garden that you've created for them?
Yeah, no, thanks. The garden is the place where we first encounter Piri the Dreamer and Flying Coyote. We don't know where they come from. We don't know if we ever will leave the garden, right? But we encounter them in a garden, which is a safe space, an idyllic space, a space of rest, a space to meet other people that also are looking for a space to rest, a space to be playful, a space to be yourself. Um, I see the garden as a safe space, and the idea of the garden also emerged like a couple of years ago after I moved to Laredo, Texas. I started to think about my own personal experiences, and and moving to Laredo, Texas also made me think about the many times I moved. I lived in different countries, 3 different countries, and I kind of lost that sense of belonging to one specific place. And building this garden for me was a kind of opportunity to build a space for my own, a space that I can say, oh, okay, I belong in this garden. This garden is mine. I can rest in this space. I can be playful. I can be a child again, as it were, in this garden. So I created this garden with a desire to create a safe space, primarily for myself, but also for those that would like to enter into it and find it as a space for comfort or rest.
Yeah, I mean, you've created it for yourself, but I definitely feel just so rested and like safe in this fictional world. It translates to almost everybody who walks through the door. It's really, really nice to watch. Um, so I'm looking at this scene right here, and I'm seeing the sort of like color palette of the ground. You've talked about these day scenes
Mm-hmm.
and these night scenes. Can you
Mm-hmm.
tell us a little bit about these scenes that have like, I guess you would call them less realistic color landscapes?
Yeah. So organically, I noticed, without me planning too much about this, noticed that the narratives take place in 3 different moments, right? Like one would be during the day, as you say, during the night, and then against these saturated color backgrounds. And I started to see these color backgrounds as moments outside of time, a temporal spaces. Uh, and I also noticed that the characters I was making, the human-like plants and animals, uh, are more active in these saturated color backgrounds that are in the day. So I started to think of them as spaces without a specific time, where the plants and animals become alive and are more active and playful, and they kind of reveal themselves when nobody's watching.
I love that. Yeah. Um, Talk to us about these plants and animals. You taught me a new word, this autochthonous. Can you tell us
Ah,
about this idea of autochthonous? I guess it's more common in Spanish, the word.
I,
Is that?
I think so, yes. In Spanish, the word autóctonos, it's pretty common. It basically means native to a place, right? So I think of these animal hybrids and plants to belong to the garden. They are native to the garden. They belong in the garden. Whether Piri the Dreamer and Flying Coyote are entering the garden from the outside, right? They it, they belong in the garden now, but they didn't emerge in the garden. but the plants and animals belong to the garden and are, in a way, like, oh, not owners of the garden, but the inhabitants of the garden.
Nice. Um, let's see. And you talked about developing these different plants and animals a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
how do you come up with these forms?
Yeah. So Petey the Dreamer and Flying Coyote has a very personal and biographical connection to me and people that I know. But the plants and animals emerge from through drawing, right? Like I draw a lot in my sketchbook, and from looking at books on plants and animals, like zoology books and botany books, and then I gather images from these books and reinterpret the plants and reinterpret the animals through a series of multiple drawings. And after making like 20, 30 drawings from the same plant, the plant becomes cartoony and becomes a character in itself. So I take images from different books and then reinterpret them over and over again until I flesh them out into a character plant or a animal hybrid. So that's kind of the process that I use to develop these characters.
So, like this, it seems like this animal sitting on the ground, it might make a little bit more sense to people how you would develop that looking at real animals and then, over multiple drawings, abstracting it. But how do you come up with something like this really tall, plant-like, skinny, multiple limb thing?
Yeah, no, using the same process, basically, I start with a flower or a plant that may catch my attention in a book, and then I draw it and reinterpret it again and again and again until the last drawing is so different and so far from the original drawing that I end up with a character. And then I start to give it some more human-like features like eyes,
Mm.
and so they grow very naturally simply through the act of drawing. Maybe at some point I may combine several plants together in order to form another plant, or I remove parts from one plant and parts from another plant, and then relocate them together into another plant. So they have that hybrid quality as well, where I bring parts from different places and collage them together. That's another way of building some of these animals and plants.
It's pretty amazing.
Thanks.
And it just produces like the craziest animals and plants that I could ever imagine. So another really important part of your work, I think, is the process. For those of you who are watching, I don't know what you think this material is, but it is just paint on canvas. Um, so Josias, could you walk through like how are you producing such like just like deceivingly perfect work?
Yeah, no, thanks. It took me a while to figure things out, honestly. there is there is a lot of testing, looking for different surfaces, testing different paints, different masking tapes. There's a lot of failure, um, but I feel I arrived to something that I'm very happy with, and but it took a lot of time. So the surface is canvas, but it has between 15 and 20 layers of gesso. Then it has to be wet sanded to get rid of the texture of the canvas and create that very smooth, like almost like almost like glass-like surface, very smooth. Uh, and all of that has a reason. Without me being able to do that, I cannot use the masking tape because then there is bleeding. or there is overspray. So preparing the surface through multiple layers of gesso and wet sanding is very important. And then testing masking tape, different masking tapes that will keep the paint from bleeding, and then testing different paints as well, paints that can go through the airbrush, paints that won't clog the airbrush, paints that won't bleed through the masking tape, paints that won't create glare in the painting. So there is a lot of testing going on. And right now I'm using flash paint, which I really love. It's produced in France. It prevents the paint from glaring when taking photographs, or just by looking at the painting from different angles. That is a quality that I really enjoyed. So yeah, that's kind of the preparation stages for the work.
What is flash?
Flash paint is a vinyl paint, is water-based, is very similar to acrylic paint, but I believe it lasts longer, and for archival purposes also is better than acrylic. But it's very similar. It's water-based, so you don't need to mix it with other mediums. You can use water to change the consistency of the paint, but it dries to a very flat quality, and it prevents from glaring, which is something that I was looking for a while.
And the one thing you didn't mention is, how do you apply this paint to the surface?
Yes, through the airbrush, airbrush and paint and what are they called, the paint guns. So I use several airbrushes and paint guns to create that flatness, so there is no visible brushwork in the painting.
So you're starting with your canvas, and you're carefully taping, and then cutting with an X-Acto knife, right? Around. No?
No, I cut I tried different methods. Seriously, it was like a long testing process. But I cut the masking tape, which I use frog tape actually, which I really love, in small strips, and then I just use the strips to draw with it, and mask out the shapes of in the canvas that I wanted to paint.
Wow. And you have to completely cover over the rest of the canvas, so there's no overspray, or do you have a lot of control?
No, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Every single part of the canvas needs to be covered with paper, to prevent the overspray getting to other areas that I don't want to paint.
And
Yeah.
another thing that I think is amazing is you really go form by form. So when painting this blue egg shape here,
Mhm.
you've got to just tape off that one form. And then even when painting these little, lime green petals, it's
Yeah.
form by form by form.
Yeah, it's really time consuming. It's a lot of there is a lot of taping
A lot of
in order
taping
to get that digital flat clean quality.
and so much patience.
Yes, but I work on multiple paintings at once, so I'm never, waiting for a painting. I might be working between 5 and 10 paintings at once, so I can keep moving, and take breaks from one painting, move to another, and I always have something to do.
And talk to us about Blender. So I have a few questions. Talk to us about Blender. Why these forms have this quality where they're shiny and they're like perfectly smooth looking and rounded forms, and why is it that that's sort of like attractive to you?
Mhm. Yeah, I was looking for a language that is direct and simple. In the past, I worked with multiple processes, but I was looking I was looking to bring into my paintings some of the qualities that I found in my sketchbooks, like simple shapes, quick shapes, like very fresh looking drawings that I have in my sketchbook. And I wanted to bring that into the paintings, but in a more, I guess, sophisticated manner through paint. Uh, so I basically these images and these shapes of the animals and plants just emerge from the sketchbook, like multiple drawings in the sketchbook. And when I have characters or narratives or shapes that interest me, I develop them further using Blender in 3D modeling. Um, and but I'm interested in simplicity. I'm interested um, in reducing things to the minimum, simple shapes, childlike forms and shapes. I'm drawn to trying to say trying to say things using just a few words.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there is a satisfaction that comes from the simplicity of the forms, how smooth and sort of perfect everything is. Um, it's just so amazing to me that this is all paint on canvas because it just feels like I'm looking at a computer screen. I mean, the colors are so vibrant, the forms are so perfect, the gradients are all perfect. Um, and just to go back to your painting and taping process, you're also not overlaying any of these different pigments. They're all side by side.
That's right. Yeah, yeah. There is no overlapping. There could be overlapping, but it changes. It changes the color, the saturation, the hues. It would change the color itself a lot. But I guess it would be fun at some point to try more overlappings. But the method to create these paintings is just placing colors next to one another.
And I imagine that by overlapping, that's how you get these nice sort of like white highlights in some of the
Yeah.
forms, because that is the gesso underneath.
Yes, yes, yeah. That the white canvas without the overlapping or layering of color help me to keep the colors more saturated and brighter.
And the final part, which is a really important part of this exhibition that unfortunately I can't show you all watching on Instagram Live, is the augmented reality. There's a whole element of the show. Like there's 5 other pieces that I can't show you in this video, that you scan a QR code when you walk into the gallery, and you can bring these figures, these animals, plants, to life in the gallery. You can place them down on the gallery floor. You can walk around them. You can explore them. You can be in front of them and behind them. Some of them move. Some of them are stationary. They're amazing, and it's some of the best augmented reality work that I've ever seen. Um, what can you tell us about that process and why that's important to you?
Yeah, thank you. I when I started to work with Blender in 3D modeling, it opened up a new world for me. Right, I began using Blender just as a way to look at the composition of my paintings and narratives. But soon I started to build this world, and I noticed that I could just take the characters and 3D print them, or I could create an animation. And then I was looking into augmented reality. Oh, I can bring them into my space. And for me, augmented reality was a way to look at the narratives from a different angle, right? More animated, and rather than the narratives be only on a flat surface on the canvas, also bring them into the space of the gallery, into my own space, the space where I move. And it has that component of encouraging the visitor to interact with the work. So the viewer is more active, and it participates more in my work. It engages more with these animals and creatures and characters and spaces. They can start walking among them and interacting with them. So for me, it brought another layer, another component where the viewer can participate in my work more deeply.
Yeah, I've seen people want to hug the different characters. I've seen people chase the flying coyote around the gallery, all in this augmented reality. So they usually have like a friend with them, and the friend is, standing back and photographing them while they're, in augmented reality, standing next to Pierre the Dreamer, or, walking through the garden. It's really like a whole different side of art viewing that is really like right now foreign, may become more common in the future, but it's really cool to watch people like react with or
That's great.
interact with artwork in a whole new way.
That's great.
uh,
Yeah, thank you.
yeah. um, well, Josias, I feel like we could probably go on and on, but I feel like we've covered quite a bit of your work. Do you feel like you
Yeah.
have anything that you else that you'd like to say about the show?
No, no. I think. Thank you for your questions. I think we covered a lot, and if anybody has questions, they can always reach out to me. I love talking more about my ideas or process. I'll be very happy to do that.
This exhibition is just on view until July 13th. These are paintings on canvas that must be seen in person to kind of like wrap your head around, because they just look so fake. I don't know. They're like they're so foreign to what we think of when we think of paintings on canvas. And the augmented reality element of the exhibition has to be seen in person too. Unfortunately, I can't really show you that. So you have until July 13th to see Josias Figueirido's Encounters in the Garden. Um, Thanks so much for your time. Love having the work here. And yeah, thanks everybody for watching.
Yeah. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you so much.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.